Good morning, students. Next topic we are going to see terminology related to Mendelism. Terminology. What is terminology? Mendel used the different words in that genetics is called terminology. So first one, Mendel noticed two different expression of a trait. Example, tall and dwarf. So traits are expressed in different ways. So first one, alleles. What is alleles? The alternative form of gene is called alleles. Then homozygous. Homozygous to dominant. Capital T, tall character. So it is a homozygous. Two identical alleles of a gene is called homozygous. Then heterozygous. One tall character, one dwarf character. So one dominant, one recessive. Heterozygous. Two different allele is called heterozygous. Next, hybrid. Mendel non-true breeding plant are called heterozygous. Hybrids means mixed varieties or mingled. Next, dominant alleles. Dominant allele is named in capital T. Recessive allele small t. Then homozygous recessive. When both alleles are recessive, the individual is called homozygous recessive. Small t. So dwarf pea plant. Then homozygous dominant. An individual with two dominant alleles is called homozygous dominant. Capital T, tall pea plant. Then heterozygous tall. One dominant allele and one recessive allele. One dominant allele or recessive allele denotes non-true breeding tall pea plant is called heterozygous tall. These are the terminology related to that Mendelisms. Then Mendelian inheritance, Mendel's laws of heredity. Mendel proposed two rules based on his observations on monohybrid cross. There are two laws. One is law of dominance, another one is law of segregation. So first one, law of dominance. Dominant character is expression. The characters are controlled by the discrete units. So the separate functions unit is called discrete units called factors, which occur in pairs. In a dissimilar pair of factors, one member of the pair is dominant, another one is recessive. So the laws gives an explanation to the monohybrid cross. The law of dominance give that explanation in monohybrid cross. The expression of only one type of parental character in F1 generation. The expression of both character is present in F2 generation. So 3:1 ratio. This ratio is present in that F2 generation. So next one, the law of segregation. Segregation means separations. Alleles do not show any blending. Both characters are seen, such as in F2 generation. One of the character is not seen in F1 generation, which is recessive character. And then a homozygous parent produces similar gametes and heterozygous parent produce two kinds of gametes. Here gametes are never hybrid. So during the formation of gametes, the factors of a pair of separate and segregate from each one another. So very important laws, 3 more questions. The law of dominance and the law of segregation, 3 more questions. Next, monohybrid cross. This is also a very important 5 more questions. Here Mendel used pea plant height. So the plant height involves this inheritance of two alleles of a single gene. When F1 generation was shelved, Mendel noticed this F2 generations, the tall characters, 3 tall characters, 1 dwarf characters. Here this is a F1, then F1 shelving, this is a F2 generation. In F2 generations, the phenotypic ratio is 3:1. What is the genotype and phenotype? The term genotype is genetic constitutions. The phenotype is this morphological character. So morphologically 3 tall plants, one dwarf plant is present, but genetically pure one tall plant, mingled variety of tall plant 2, then pure dwarf plant is 1. So this is a genotypic ratio. It is the resulting from this combining gametes during the fertilization can be easily understood with this help of diagram is called a Punnett square. This is a Punnett square. It is named after a British genetist Reginald C. Punnett. So the law of dominance and the law of segregation give a suitable explanation to that monohybrid cross. Next, reciprocal cross. The interchanging cross is called reciprocal cross. The tall pea plant were pollinated with the pollens from true breeding dwarf. The result was tall plant, always tall plant. Here tall, this is a female plant crossed with this dwarf male plant. This is a male plant, and tall male plant crossed with the dwarf female plant. Matching are done in both ways, which are called reciprocal cross. The result of reciprocal cross are the same. So here there is no sex dependent. The result of Mendel's monohybrid crosses were not sex dependent. So, the phenotypic and genotypic analysis of the crosses has been shown by checkerboard method. This is a checkerboard method, or by that Folkline method. Folkline method, this method is this Folkline method. This is a monohybrid cross flowchart method. Here, true breeding, true tall plants, true breeding, true dwarf plant. This is a parental. So capital T, small t, parent. So these two parents crossed, then it will get a F1 generation, capital T, small t. So one tall character, one dwarf character. So all the plants are in that morphological characters is a tall plant. So here this tall plant shelving. So again, gamete separations, capital T, small t, capital T, small t. This is a Folkline method. You can use this Folkline method that in that F2 generation, pure tall plant, then mingled tall plant, then pure dwarf plant. So this offsprings, these are that offsprings F2 genotypes, capital T, capital T, small t, small t, small t. So the genotypic ratio 1:2:1. This is a genotypic ratio. Then phenotypic ratio altogether, these all that tall plant. So 3:1 is the phenotypic ratio of monohybrid cross. Next, mental, analytical and empirical approach. Mental choose the two contrasting traits for each character. So in F1, the recessive traits and its factors do not disappear, and they are hidden in that F1 generation, but it is shown in that F2 generation. So mental got 3:1 ratio of that F2 between the dominant and recessive trait. So he was the first scientist to use this type of quantitative analysis in that biological experiment. So mental analytical approach is truly an outstanding scientific achievement. In his experiment, the particulate units, that's gene units, transmitted from one generation to other, now they are called genes. So, mental experiments were well planned to determine the relationship of hereditary traits. So, it is called empirical approach. Laws that were arrived from an empirical approach is known as empirical laws.